Well, I want to welcome everyone to Sanctum House's second annual Voices of Hope annual Ending Human Trafficking fundraiser. I am so grateful that you're here and that you took the time, this hour this morning, to spend with us. Even though it's a bit different this year, we all know why, but we're going to get through it, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful hour. So I'm really grateful that you're all here. I really want to thank TCF Bank for sponsoring this event. They were gracious to step up and help us out, and we love that. I'd like to do a couple of a couple of housekeeping notes. One, it's probably best for you to keep your computers in side-by-side speaker view. I mean, if you like to see the whole gallery, you can do that, but probably side-by-side speaker view is the best because we do have the PowerPoint presentation. You will be muted throughout the entire presentation by our administrator, the presentation person, lovely Stephanie, thank you. And when you want to talk, you will have to unmute yourself when it's your turn to actually talk as a panelist, or if you are an attendee and you want to say something, you'll need to say it in the chat box. So please go down to the chat box as opposed to raising your hand. Go in the chat box and you can ask your question and we'll answer it. Also, we will be very respectful of your time. We're going to be here for an hour, and then we're going to kiss and hug and say goodbye, and that will be the hour. This is, of course, an awareness event because the more we know, the better we do, and I'm very grateful that you're here to hear about Sanctum House and human trafficking and what's going on in the anti-human trafficking movement as it's moving forward now. But I also want to tell you, this is our second annual fundraiser. That's the word right here. It is a fundraiser, and we would love it if you would, if something touches your heart, if you feel like this is the cause for you, if you could contribute, we would really, really appreciate that also. So go in the chat box. I mean, there's a link, and anyway, just enjoy the presentation and learn as much as you can. I'd like to now introduce you to our host and our moderator, Karen Drew. We are so honored that she's come back again. She could tolerate us, and she came back for a second year. She is an investigative reporter extraordinaire for WDIV Local 4. She is well-versed in the anti-human trafficking movement. She knows it very well and really takes it to her heart and has a real heart for this. You know, she's a true advocate. She has interviewed us on her show, and we are really not only honored, Karen, we are grateful that you have come back for another year to host and moderate our presentation and our second annual Voices of Hope virtual this year, Ending Human Trafficking fundraiser. Thank you so much, and I will put it over to you.
I assume everyone can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Edie, for that introduction. I really greatly appreciate it. The fact that we're here meeting virtually, I just want to thank everyone who's participating today. I know we have this crazy life that we're all leading, and to dedicate an hour of your day to spend virtually for such an important topic, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. As Edie said, I've been covering human trafficking in Metro Detroit for years, and every single story I do, it just touches my heart, the women that I'm meeting during this. And I know there are men too in the human trafficking victim/survivor circle, but the people I've met are women. And it just, every single time, it opens up my eyes to what this problem is, how big it is, but at the same time, how hidden it is. I know I spoke before when I talked a little bit about this, a Birmingham teenager who became friends with a boy. He took some sexually explicit photos of her and then started trafficking her. She would sneak out her window at night because she was so afraid that he'd take those photos and show her parents. Her story was horrific. Thank goodness she was able to get out, only simply because her parents moved, but her parents moved not because they knew their daughter was a victim of human trafficking. And that's the problem with this. It is so hidden, it is so secret. And and I think when I spoke last year, I talked to a lot of people about, and I love that the message here is voices of hope. We need to use our voice to educate our neighbors, our friends, people who work in services that visit homes, etc., because we really need to have our eyes open and our voices to be used to expose this. You'll be hearing from Nate Napper from Joseph Project a little bit later today, and he and I have dealt with a lot of different stories of human trafficking victims. I won't go into a ton of detail, but another example is a young lady who was a daughter, lived in Bloomfield Hills, dad is a doctor, doing great, like really wonderful in high school, wonderful in college, a little anxiety, decides to take some medicines or pills to kind of control that anxiety. That leads to a drug addiction, ultimately goes to drug rehab a couple times, in and out. When she gets out one time, literally, because of a person that she knew, she was picked up on the streets of Ann Arbor, which you would think would be completely fine and safe. She thought that they were just going to help her get her job and get her feet back, and start working. She finds herself in a motel being trafficked within 12 to 15 hours of thinking someone's going to help her. This is a daughter who was raised in Bloomfield Hills, whose dad's a doctor, who got good grades, but because of her drug addiction, they saw this little weakness, snatched her, put her into this cycle, and it was horrific. And what's even more astonishing is the fact that when this story all comes to an end 5 days later, she not only is saved, thank goodness, she's charged. She literally is charged with a crime. And I can't tell you how many times this happens with these young people, middle-aged people, who they survive this and then they're charged because we all are assuming, oh, you're addicted to drugs. Oh, you're a prostitute. And we put this label on them, which does not exist because we don't take the time to educate ourselves and realize they should not be charged. We really need to be saving these people. I think I mentioned last year where I get so crazy when I hear in the newsroom, someone saying, oh, a prostitution ring was busted. Many times it's not a prostitution ring, it's victims of human trafficking, but we haven't educated ourselves that this is happening, whether it's in Troy, Ann Arbor, Detroit, the cycle, the circle that goes is many times Ohio, Chicago, Detroit, and they keep moving them every few days just to keep them moving so people can't track them down. So it's our responsibility here today to take the time to learn, to also learn to listen. And I think that's so important because many times when someone speaks, perhaps from a survivor standpoint, we walk in with some stereotypes or some assumptions. So I'm going to ask everyone today to take those barriers and assumptions down, to listen, to really see how easily this can happen to really anyone, your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, your neighbor. And then beyond listening, now let's take action with Voices of Hope and really use our voice and our energy and our time to help Sanctum House. Because I'll tell you, when I cover these stories and these women are brought in, what are their choices? Oh, you can go to rehab or jail or, oh, the ER because you've been completely beaten up. But okay, fine. So the bruises heal. What do you do next? There's nowhere to go. And that's where Sanctum House comes in, not only as a savior in a sense of picking up these young women, but giving them the tools, the education, the therapy, fighting the addiction, finding a job, learning how to do a job interview, believing in themselves, and ultimately earning and believing in their own voice. And that's what this is all about today. So I'm just honored that I can be a part of this and to start the dialogue because this is just so vitally important for all of us. I just hope everyone will realize how we really can make a difference. So I want to thank Edie for including me, and I'd like to introduce now Karen Moore. And she's got some very important things to say. She's a graduate of MSU, a retired Ford global exec, former president and CEO of Ladywood High, and right now the executive director of Sanctum House. So we can hear a little bit more about what they're dealing with now, because obviously this is a growing problem. And we do have COVID, where now some of these things where we were able to find people and track situations down, they're hidden because we're not interacting as much. So Karen, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, well, Karen, thank you so much. That was a great segue and intro into what I want to talk about, which is what the services and the program that we offer the ladies. once, as you said, you know, they're often viewed as criminals, but actually many times they are victims. So when the women come to us, we have a 24-month comprehensive and integrated services. And we also have 24/7 staff. So we have staff here around the clock that is very qualified and supportive of the ladies as they go through the program. Our population are adult women 18 and over. So the services that we offer, physical health care. We offer all aspects of physical health care, medical needs. We have a primary care physician that works with us, multiple, so the ladies get in for a physical so they can start to heal physically. We offer dental care, including oral surgery, vision care, and housing. Then we move on to, we also offer emotional and mental health care, because we service the entire person, body, mind, and soul. So we have trauma-informed therapists. All our therapists are trauma-informed. Each of the ladies get up to 3 individual therapy appointments every week. We have group therapy 3 times a week. And actually, one of our therapists is on the panel who will talk later, Joyce. We have a very strong substance abuse recovery program. Many of the ladies come in, as Karen mentioned, with substance abuse, could be substance or alcohol abuse. And one thing that we've recently added is pet therapy, and which is really, really helpful to the ladies. We also offer spiritual support. Each woman finds their faith differently and at different times. So whatever faith they find, we support that. We have community activities, volunteer, and educational support. We're so proud of our partners. We have 3 ladies in college right now. We offer entrepreneurship training, financial training, and housework, cleaning, cooking, etc. None of this could happen without our partners in the community. And I just want to cite that I don't have the time to go through all of them, but Trinity Healthcare provides our healthcare for the ladies. Wayne State University School of Medicine provides psychiatric care. Michigan School of Psychology has, we have 3 psychologists doing their practicum work here with us, and we've been doing that for 4 years now. Oakland University provides practicum students in journalism. OCC provides scholarship to our ladies. Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence will be talking with our ladies Monday. We're also working with Wayne County Executive Warren Evans and his team on educating throughout Wayne County. And one great program is Pearls of Great Price, who offer us support on all ends. One last, because I know I'm running out of time, but one last program I want to talk about that we're just in the early phases of, we'll be launching later this year, is working with the University of Michigan doctoral program to have doctoral students doing their practicum work here. So the community outreach, providing all these services to our ladies, and the great staff we have here 24/7 is the reason we can do this. So with that, I want to turn it over to, I don't know if I'm doing it or Karen Drew is, that to one of our, or to our first graduate. So I'll let her take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen. You know, with all the programming that Karen was talking about, and a lot of hard work and a lot of tears, I was able to graduate Sanctum House almost a year ago. And the life that I've created for myself is beyond my wildest dreams. So I want to thank Sanctum House for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And for all the people that continue to follow me and continue to walk down this process with me and support me in everything and every journey that I've ever dreamed of. Thank you. Back to you, Karen.
All right, I'll take it from you. And thanks so much, Paige. We want to hear from Claire. She is a resident of Sanctum House, former attorney who is now pursuing a graduate degree in theology, which I think is really interesting to make that transformation. But obviously you do make so many transformations when you go to Sanctum House. What she has to say is very important, so we'll send it over to Claire.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Paige, I think it's wonderful that you mentioned, this sort of walk that we do here. I am actually wearing your shoes today as sort of an homage to that. Paige and my story are quite different, but we still deal with the same trauma that comes from this kind of victimization. Personally, I was approached by a gentleman asking for help, was held captive for 3 days until I managed to escape. Throughout that time, it was just abuse and trauma and control and almost a sort of brainwashing. And the entire relationship becomes predicated on fear and shame. From there, after I was able to get away, I ended up at the hospital. And it's because of Sanctum House's outreach that there I was told, actually what had happened is this man was grooming you for human trafficking, and you are actually a victim of gang-related human trafficking. I was told about Sanctum House at the hospital. I heard it was a 2-year program. I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have 2 years to give to this. I have a life. I have to go live my life. I can't let this disrupt it. I left the hospital. I didn't take Sanctum House up on the offer. These human traffickers knew where I went to church. They knew where I took my coffee. They knew where I worked. They started threatening me. There was nothing available to help me deal with my trauma. Upon leaving the hospital, I was told that, we can give you prescriptions for anxiety reducing drugs such as Ativan, and you can have a 15-minute appointment once a month with a psychiatrist in your area. That's it. And the rest of my life was just going to be sort of trying to control the anxiety and the fear and the trauma as much as I could with pharmaceuticals and trying to avoid these gentlemen who were threatening my life. And it was at that point that I realized there was nowhere I was going to get what I needed to deal with what had happened other than at Sanctum House. And so I contacted Sanctum House. It's all very safe. Well, it's very safe. I was told to go to a certain location. I was picked up by the case manager and I was taken somewhere I had no idea where I was going. I arrived at the house, and that's really when the journey of healing begins. Like I said, although all of our trafficking experiences are a little different, the one thing that unites them all is the fear and the shame that is quite literally beaten into you. And I think what makes Sanctum House so special is they identify that commonality and they come at it with an individually centered program, but one that works for everybody because it has identified so well that common trauma and the common fear and shame that accompany all of us. And the way that they do that, and it's in such a holistic process, that it really does take 2 years. So you have 1 year looking back, right? And you unpack all of that trauma. You unpack what the fear and the shame does to the mind, what it does to the body, what it does to the soul, because it empties you. You come here and you are nothing on the inside, and you have nothing left on the outside. And after the trauma therapy 2-3 times a week, after the group therapy, including healthy relationships that help you rebuild trust, after living a year in the facilities that try to show you that you are worth something, after that, you can start to look forward. And then Sanctum House gives you those individual tools too. Whether you want to work, whether you want to go to school, whatever you want to do, in that second year, you can start to rebuild a life that was violently stolen from you. So you rebuild the self, and then you take that self that they have helped you to rebuild, and you can turn it outwards. And you can build a life for yourself. You can start to contribute to the community, and you can start to be an active voice, a voice of hope, so that we can stop this form of human slavery. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody coming. Have a nice day.
Claire and Paige, thank you very much for sharing part of your stories. I know it's hard just to speak up sometimes, and I think you made a very good point, Claire, in terms of the shame, which you should not feel, but victims and survivors do feel that. Sometimes, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've got a video that kind of talks with Paige and a little bit about her journey, so we're going to play that for all of you right now.
Hi, my name is Paige, and I am a survivor of human trafficking. I didn't really know that I had been trafficked. I thought it was a life that I had chose for myself. I put all the blame and guilt on myself. what I needed to address first was my trauma, was my self-worth, because I was so self-destructive. I didn't think I deserved anything. I thought everything that happened to me was supposed to be happening to me. That's what I was told. I was told I was worthless. I was told that nothing, I was not deserving of anything in life. This is the only thing I was going to amount to. And I believed that for a lot of years. I believed that. And I was living with my daughter when I got clean. And my daughter told me, she said, "Mom, you really need some help." She said, "You are isolating, you're angry, you walk around with all this guilt." She said, "You need some extra help." So I went on a hunt. My intentions were just to get therapy. And I found Sanctum House. And when they told me it was a 2-year program, I was like, oh, absolutely not. And the lady that helped me get into Sanctum House, she said, just try it. It's not a lockup facility. She said, just try it. If you don't like it, leave. I arrived at Sanctum House May 7th, 2018, and I stayed there for 2 years. When I walked into the house, I was just astonished at how beautiful it was and how friendly everybody was. Really, they just showed a lot of concern, very caring. They weren't judgmental at all. It was a program that I've never experienced because I've been in a lot of programs. The programs that I were in were treatment centers. They would address my drug problem. They never addressed my trauma. They never addressed how to deal with shame, how to deal with guilt, how to deal with my self-esteem, how to deal with my self-worth. They never dealt with life skills. And Sanctum House addressed all those areas, and it gave me a safe place to do it. One of the things that I asked them, I didn't know how to have healthy relationships. So they made sure they got us a class in healthy relationships. They would have bankers come in there to help us address our finances, how to do budgets. We had survivors come in there that would give survivor groups. They had, for education, I had my own tutor. We had an entrepreneur class where an entrepreneur teacher came in. Whatever we needed, they made sure we had. And once I got acclimated into the program, my life started to flourish. They showed me a different type of loyalty. I wasn't loyal to the streets anymore. They showed me a different type of loyalty. They taught me what friendship, compassion, and honesty, and all those good things that I never knew or I was even capable of having or even experiencing. I have an amazing relationship, especially my oldest daughter, my oldest granddaughter. I have an amazing relationship with her. She always tells me how proud she is of me. I'm glad that they're proud of me. I'm glad that they want me in their life. I want to buy a house. I definitely want to travel in a year or two. I want to have my own business. Today, I am a part of the growth of other women. I'm a mentor. I go in there and facilitate groups, and that's the whole thing, is to get more survivors so we can help other women survive. I think people need to know exactly how important it is to have a place like Sanctum House. There's got to be more programs. We've got to keep this program open. We've got to, because women like me need this. Treatment centers just ain't enough. It's just not enough. People have to address their trauma in order to believe in themselves, to believe that they can become a part of society. Thank you for giving me a chance at life. I want so many other people to get what I got.
Wow. Talk about a voice of hope, right? Most definitely. Paige, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your continued journey. It takes a lot of strength, obviously, to speak and to share, especially on a video like that. So thank you. I think it gives us an inside look a little bit about what Sanctum House does to transform. Now, right now, we're going to do a panel, and this is, I have to tell you, pretty cool, because the fact that you can get these three experts in one room at one time, kind of talking about some of these big topics and questions you may have thought of. So again, keep those listening ears on, because we've got some really great topics that we're going to discuss and kind of unpack about some of the things you may or may not know necessarily about human trafficking. Our first panelist is Joyce Dixon, and you may have heard of her before. She's very does so much in terms of fighting human trafficking and raising awareness, daily advocates for freedom and the restoration of dignity and value to those affected by this heinous and corrupt system. Joyce holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Michigan, but more importantly, to realize she was actually incarcerated for 17 years for the fatal shooting of her perpetrator. Joyce began fighting for the rights of women who have been battered and abused, and for the children. So while she was still behind bars, she continued to work diligently on behalf of this elite population. Now, she currently is in private practice in Royal Oak. She is the survivors group therapist at Sanctum House. So she can obviously help us on so many different fronts. Nate Napper, I mentioned him in the beginning of our get together this morning. He is the founder and the CEO of the Joseph Project. As a federal law enforcement officer, he served on the Detroit-based anti-trafficking squad, where he investigated human trafficking and child exploitation matters. He formerly served as the Assistant Attorney General at the Michigan Department of Attorney General's office, where he worked as a member of the Michigan Commission on Human Trafficking. He's a member of the state bar, and he's a graduate of Calvin College, Pepperdine Law School, and has done so much here locally, and obviously his efforts are now being recognized nationally as well. And Brian Rossi, he works with a local counter sex trafficking nonprofit organization that focuses on the demand abatement via disruption, so the service to the greater anti-trafficking ecosystem in Michigan, and direct mail engagement. Brian holds an MA in social justice from Kilns College and calls Metro Detroit home. We want to thank Joyce, Nate, and Brian for joining us today. I know we've got a lot to tackle. I'm going to start with you, Joyce, just because obviously you've got a really close connection with Sanctum House, and you see what all of these women are going through. And I know Claire and Paige talked about shame, but I think validating these women and talking about what their concerns are and why they're so important is probably a good stepping stone to start off this conversation. Joyce.
Thank you so much. That's a pleasure, Karen. Good morning, everybody. One, Sanctum House is amazing, and I'm going to tell you why. Both Claire's and Paige's statements pretty much embodied what happens with survivors and what's going on in Sanctum House. And many people believe that once you're out of the situation that you're fixed. You are not. Claire said it. You couldn't have said it any better. You are just empty inside and out. So I have been tasked basically with providing women with three basic tools that I think are most important. And one is to help them rebuild their confidence, not only to believe that they can get through the program, but they can also get through life. And two is to provide the tool that says, okay, I'm going to do what I can to help you instill hope by understanding that you do have a voice. And what happened to you before is not happening to you now. And you do not have to live in fear and guilt and shame as if what was happening to you back then is happening to you now. And I think my third point, the third thing that I really, really work on is reconciliation. Helping women understand how to take the past, reconcile it with their present, and make it work for their future. And in all of this, most importantly, is to validate, validate, validate. So we have to find a way to just replace the guilt and the worthlessness and the shame and the helplessness with I am strong, I am powerful, I have a voice, and I can do this. And that's pretty much what my job is. And you can't do it in 5 or 6 weeks. There has to be long-term treatment in order to get these things accomplished.
So Joyce, we talk about validation, we talk about purpose. Let's talk about success. How do we get these women on a path to success? Like you said, it doesn't happen in 5, 6 weeks. What do we need more of?
Well, one, we need more Sanctum houses. But there are ways that we have to revalidate, rebuild the belief system. And the only thing that really separates a person from real success is the belief in the fact that I can do it, that I am worthy of this success. And as I'm sure many people are going to tell you today, Karen, that a lot of the women are so full of fear and shame, and we have to, well, you have to learn how to make decisions for yourself all over again, because you are stripped of all those capabilities. So it is about validation. It is about belief in yourself. It is about education, continuing education, and it is about support.
Quick question, last question for you, Joyce. Did you have an aha moment when you were inside Sanctum House? And it could be something very small, it could be something big, but was there a moment where you're like, I got this, and I know they've got my back?
Well, during group sessions, I always feel like that. They are such an amazing group of women. And even as we have group, I learn from them as well. And so so I think they understand that I do have their back, but at the same time, they have mine. And because I know what it is they've been through, I know where they're trying to get to, and I know that they can. And I think that, you know what? I think the best aha moment I ever had at Sanctum House was my first visit. I could not believe how beautiful it was and how clean it was. And there was a lot of food. And the atmosphere was so inviting. The atmosphere stated, okay, you know what? You can do this. This is how your life is supposed to be. This is how you are supposed to live. You deserve this. And I think that was the best moment I had at Sanctum House.
I love that. Thank you, Joyce. I want to bring in Nate. We were talking about, Nate and I have done a variety of stories together, but what I think is important is that not a lot of people realize many times survivors of human trafficking actually face their own legal issues, whether they've been arrested or whether they just have some horrible credit. They can't rebuild their life. They can't get an apartment. So with the Joseph Project, Nate, talk to us a little bit about some of these pro bono legal services that are offered.
Absolutely. And, thank you, Karen. I just want to begin by saying thank you to you for hosting us today, and to Sanctum House for extending the invitation for me to join this wonderful Voices of Hope event. I think just to begin my answer, I think it's so appropriate that this event is being held during this week. Of course, yesterday, we're just fresh off of a celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who, of course, was a profound voice of hope for his generation in his own day. And so it's in that spirit that I participate in this event today. And I hope that in my own small way, I can be a voice of hope for survivors. And I believe that in your own ways, everybody who's participating on this call today is a voice of hope for those who are in deep need. So thank you to everybody for participating, and Karen, to you for facilitating as well. Speaking to your question about the legal needs of survivors, my answer is really just an extension of what so many people have touched on already in the presentation. And that is a misconception that I think is prevalent among the trafficking community, that when somebody is rescued or liberated, if you will, from an exploitation scenario, their problems are over and they are now free to walk into a brand new future. And as Joyce mentioned, that's often not the case. And at the Joseph Project, we see a variety of legal needs that arise out of exploitative situations. Typically, those tend to take the form of criminal, family law, or immigration challenges. So imagine, a situation where you're trafficked, for example, and you're forced, defrauded, or coerced to engage in certain activities. And then Per the story that you referenced earlier, Karen, you're subsequently charged for those activities. That's unjust. But fortunately, a pro bono attorney is somebody who could speak up for you and be a voice to you within the legal system. And so when you assign legal counsel to a survivor of trafficking, they tend to do much better, and they can overcome some of those legal obstacles that stand in the way of a better future.
What are some of the common legal obstacles or, issues that they encounter and that you're dealing with at the Joseph Project that you can assist with?
Sure. So you mentioned already, and I won't retread this, but many we see are charged with prostitution-related charges, and so expunging a criminal record or tackling a drug charge head-on is a very common occurrence that we see. Another one that I might point out: survivors often have children, and they care deeply about their children. And there are times where, because of the activities in which they've been forced to engage, they are separated from members of their family and especially their children. But what's interesting is that when they turn their lives around at places like Sanctum House, and then their story turns around, what's the first thing they think of? Their children, right? And they want to be reunited with their families. But of course, you need to go through a legal process to reestablish a custody arrangement that's favorable to you. So an attorney could help with that as well.
I remember talking with one victim who her child was the result of her trafficker, and then was wound up in a legal battle for child custody from this individual who was trafficking her. So sometimes we don't even think how many layers that you really need to peel this onion to try to help some of these survivors, Nate.
It's so true. It's a layered process. And, I think that there are so many needs. And what's beautiful to see at Sanctum House is that they address so many of those needs. I mean, some are more immediate in nature. You need food, clothing, and shelter. Other times, drug rehabilitation services are needed because drugs are very intricately tied many times to human trafficking activities. Sometimes it's legal. Oftentimes, it's a combination of all of these things conflating together to hold somebody back. But if you can have a program that addresses so many of these needs and helps put a life back together, you are putting somebody on a road of hope. And at Joseph Project, we talk about the transition from exploitation to empowerment. Your exploitation might be over, but your social reintegration is just beginning. And I think that's what Sanctum House does so wonderfully, is get you back on the road to social reintegration.
And in terms of, I guess we had one question someone just asked: what happens when people are charged with a gun or other violent acts? We'll answer that real quickly, Nate, because that just popped up on the screen.
You got to attack it head on. There's no sense in ignoring it, no matter what the charge, whether it's a violent offense, a non-violent offense. We have to understand exactly what happened, and you have to get competent counsel to attack it head on. It will not do anybody any good to just kick the can down the road and hope it goes away. I can tell you, as an attorney, as a law enforcement officer, once something is documented and once it's on paper, it will not go away. And so what you have to do is attack it. And what we want to do is give you the counsel to address that head on. And oftentimes they do very well.
And Joseph Project is doing some great work, I know, in Lansing, trying to do expungement and try to help some of these survivors get some of these things off their records. We do a lot of stories. Keep your eyes and ears open, everyone, to that organization, as they're really making some great strides. I want to send it over to Brian Rossi and talk to me a little bit, Brian, about what you encounter with your work and how it kind of interplays with Sanctum House.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, we actually don't have regular contact with survivors. We view our work very connected, though, to Sanctum House, and so it's in a way that needs a little bit of context. So I just want to start out by saying first that the men who volunteer in our program, we usually have them ask themselves this question: in a culture that exploits vulnerable people, what is my role? And we ask that question as kind of twofold. The first part being, let's have an honest self-assessment of what my role has been up at this point. What has our role been? What has our use of pornography been like? Have we ever frequented strip clubs or paid for strippers? How accommodating have any of us as guys been in just the hypersexualization and commodification of human bodies in order to sell products that we see in advertisements, things like that. And then the second part is okay, so what's my role in helping care for and change culture for the sake of everyone, and especially for those who are already being exploited or who seem to be more vulnerable to exploitation than others? And that question is a very disruptive question. Disruption is probably the best word to use to describe what it is that we do. The tangible work that the EPIC project does is that we recruit and we train men who volunteer with us to leverage technology to disrupt attempts to purchase young women online locally and in other cities as well. We do this work from behind mobile devices and laptops, and we speak to other men in our community at the moment that they've decided to buy sex with a woman. We do this on a weekly basis. We've learned firsthand that most of the men who drive this industry do not look like the evil monsters that we see in movies and on TV. They look like department managers. They look like middle school football coaches. We've talked with one. They look like pastors. We've actually talked with one. They look like our neighbors. They look like us because they actually are us. As men in society, we need to understand where we sit in the grand scheme of things on this issue. And that is, sex trafficking is a supply and demand industry, and men create the majority of that demand. So this is, we understand this as a uniquely male problem in that we are the problem. And so with that in mind, we understand that men have not been very safe, that we haven't been very safe people for women in the life. And so our responsibility now is not to come to the table on our own terms, but instead look to the women, many of whom who have actually been leading this fight for a whole lot longer than most of us guys have even been aware of the issue. And we look to them to help guide us on our own journey of understanding and action. We stay in our lane, and we understand our lane as whatever survivors and advocates tell us it is. So it's constantly changing. How it's looked up to this point is that Sanctum knows that we're around, we're on call. Sometimes it's helping with repairs at the house. Sometimes it's dropping off supplies. We see our connection though to the residents there, and the work that's happening there is much deeper. We actually hope that many years from now, or hope sooner rather than later, that Sanctum House actually has to close because they won't be needed, because there's no more demand from men in our community who are willing to pay money to force a woman to have sex. So Edie, Karen, Paige, let's see, I gotta move the windows around, but anyone else who I'm forgetting, Joey says hi, by the way. But thank you all for showing us the way. Thanks for your kindness to me personally as I first got into this work, but to all of us guys as we're just slowly becoming aware and awake, learning how to change. Our group, the EPIC project, needs the Sanctum House to be around so that we have someone to lead us, encourage us, correct us when we start strategizing and planning without keeping survivors at the center of our focus. We personally can't continue to change without your presence in our community. So thank you again. Thank you to everybody who's attending this and watching and supporting Sanctum House. So on behalf of the EPIC project in Southeast Michigan, thank you all. Thanks for everybody's time and thanks for listening.
Brian, thank you very much for all of your work and your dedication. I really appreciate that. I've got one quick question for you, just in terms of, we know the demand is out there. Is there anything you've learned in the past, let's say year to 18 months that's changed? Clearly people go to technology. This is not a, you don't go up and down the street, like some people stereotype. What have you learned in the past year and a half that's maybe changed that could enlighten us?
Yeah, the two most prevalent things that are sticking out to my mind right now as you ask that question would be, one, the fact that we all experienced this pandemic and lockdowns, and we saw the demand sustain and sometimes even spike. So we would see guys reach out and they'd start asking, hey, do you need any bills paid this month? What do you need help with rent? And so very predatory, understanding that it's tough times for everybody, and certain people are going to be more vulnerable, especially, you know, in times like the pandemic. Vulnerable populations of people tends to become even more vulnerable. So, but the other thing is just a lot of what we've been talking about and what's been mentioned is just the reality that, like, what we need is men to understand this issue the right way. There's so much bad information out there, and bad information harms people. And to just have guys in the community be aware that, you know what, the work of Sanctum House is super messy and long. It doesn't happen overnight. The easiest thing to raise money for in anti-trafficking work is rescue, because everybody wants to see kicking down doors and saving people. We want a happy ending. We'd like to see, we've been trained to understand this by movies, unfortunately. And so, but to have men understand that the real deep work that's going to end this is on the developmental side of things, and the work that Sanctum is doing. Understand it's costly, it's messy, it doesn't look how we want it to look in like a nice, clean, buttoned up half-hour, you know, TV special. And so to realize that, I think, is going to hopefully produce a community full of men that understand, like, Sanctum is important. Maybe we should, maybe prosecutors are going to be more apt to put people up on a stand who are traditionally labeled with, you know, all of the baggage that comes along with the title prostitute. Like, maybe they're actually going to put women and survivors up on stands to testify, because they're not viewed as fundamentally untrustworthy anymore, because the men in the community understand where they actually came from, and they're going to start believing them. You know what I mean?
Brian, thank
So
you. I appreciate that perspective. I do. As you were talking about what's next in terms of what Sanctum House does, I think it's just a great segue to bring in Edie Franklin, who is the founder and the president, to talk to us a little bit about progress at Sanctum House. Edie.
Well, first, what I'm going to do, that was wonderful. Thank you to the panel for all that they've done. And we're running short on time. And so I'm going to do this as quickly as we can. We have a couple other issues that we'd like to address. But the first one is our Spirit of Sanctum House Award. Every year, now we've done it for 2 years, we have given an award to a person, someone who has given their heart to Sanctum House. And in giving their heart to Sanctum House, he or she is a woman that serves and has the mission of Sanctum House and the women of Sanctum House close to their heart at all times. Last year it was a woman, this year it's a man. And he is a person who is very proactive in his vision for Sanctum House and his need to keep us and wanting to keep us safe and secure. He does our security often in the middle of the night, or the next day he'll call me and say, there's leaves covering camera 3. We want to keep the women safe. So go clip the leaves. Okay, so he's really got us on our mind. This person is of character, often does fundraisers for us, will employ someone, is somebody that might employ someone or be a mentor to one of the women that is in the house, and they will come back and give to us. When we needed a van, Tom was in fact the first person to say, okay, let me figure out how to get you a van so we can get all the women to their meetings and doctor's appointments when they have to go as a group. So not only are they full of character, Tom is on our board of directors, and we're really happy to have him there. He is a man among women. He is gentle when he needs to be, and he is straightforward when it's necessary. He is more often than not in private, the wind beneath my wings. He's another one that lifts me up and catches my back, and I'm so grateful. So this year's Spirit of Sanctum House Award honoree is Mr. Tom Parker. So would you like to say something, Tom?
Thank you, Edie. Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute, and I don't know if Stephanie was trying to do it as well. I'm truly humbled and honored to receive this award. You see it behind you. Here it is. It's absolutely gorgeous award, and I'm just so very grateful. I want to stop for just a second. I want to thank Karen Drew for her time, and Stephanie for organizing this meeting. And the staff is just an amazing staff. Karen, Shannon, Erica, Rita, all the many volunteers and our board of directors. As Edie mentioned, I'm a man among many women. There are 13 of us on our board of directors, and I'm one of the only male. In a little bit, I'm going to give a plea to you guys out there. When my wife introduced me to Edie and to Sanctum House, that was in 2014, Margie and I had a draw to women that found themselves victimized by this horrendous crime. And it was easy for us with church to write a check, but this was an opportunity to truly get involved. And it just has meant so much to us. That was in 2014. Edie began her planning meetings monthly. One of the most organized individuals, punctual, started the meetings at 6:30, ended promptly at 8. She was so respectful of our time, and she's just been a tremendous leader. And to receive this award from Edie it truly is an honor. Well, we went for about 3 years and opened up the home in, actually it was February of 2018. So signed the lease in September, and our first client was there in February of 2018. And it has been just an amazing, amazing experience. I think what the takeaway for me in this whole presentation is that this is the beginning of a process. When someone gets rescued, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help them to get past this. And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of volunteers. We have many volunteers that have helped out tremendously. We need more. And so I'm going to ask a plea for your time, your talents, and of course, your treasure. It is not easy to run a home like this, and it's costly. It takes a lot of money, but it is so worth it. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody for recognizing me. This truly is meaningful to me. Thank you.
Now that you have talked, thank you so much, Tom. We are honored to be able to honor you because of your participation and Margie's allowing you to do it and her participation. So we're really grateful. Now that you've talked about how I'm conscious of everybody's time so much, I'm going to cut my little piece down a bit. But if we could put up my slide, that would be really great. And I want to right now talk to you from my heart, because that's what I do mostly. I talk from my heart. We're in the middle of a $3 million capital campaign. When Tom talked about, we started this 7-8 years ago, and we had meetings, and we have gone through all of our figuring out how we were going to do it and what we were going to do. The money always came, and the people always came, and the volunteers came. And I had an idea and developed a following. And then together we made a commitment to a group of women, a population out there that was being forsaken. That there were no long-term treatment facilities in southeastern Michigan when we started this. We ended up being the first back then when we opened. And then a couple more came. A $3 million capital campaign we started in December of 2020 so that we could finish our mission and finish our commitment. We want to purchase the property that we're on. We have one house right now that we're living in, and we have a 3-acre piece of property with a second house. And then we also have an apartment building on the property that would be transitional housing, which would help give our women a springboard that they can establish credit so that they can go out and get a job and get another apartment when they're ready to go further away on their own. This way they stay close to us and they can mentor and come back. But if we buy this property, rehab this property, and then also be able to sustain the people that run the program, what good is an empty building if you don't have people to do it? It costs $45,000 a year of out-of-pocket money to help a woman start from being broken into being a thriver. And that $45,000 is hard cash that comes out of our pockets from foundations, grants, individual people that support us. And we are so grateful for all of those people that do that. We have over $170,000 a year comes in hard goods, hard services for our women, clothing, food, all the ancillary products that it takes to work with people. Because when we have a woman in our house, we go out and do awareness work. We have done awareness work, and the community has followed us. And when they see what we're doing, they are willing to give of their hearts, of their time, their treasure, and their talent. What does $45,000 do? Part of it is it gives each of our women 20,240 continuous days of around-the-clock treatment and care and therapy. We deal with a dual diagnosis of addiction and trauma. It gives them what they need from every product. You've heard everybody talk about it. I do not have to repeat it. We have currently 12 beds. We would have 36 beds when we expand our program. There's between 500 and 800 beds in the entire country for this population. There are tens of thousands of women out there that need long-term treatment. When we expand our campus to 36, we will be approximately 5 to 7% of all the beds in the entire country. That's really pretty impressive, I think, if we're able to do this, or when we do this, because we will do this. We've always done everything we said we would. We have made a commitment to the women of Sanctum House that the possibilities will, in fact, be endless for them. If they can and will, if they do the heavy lifting, which they all do, when they're committed, they're committed. So we want to fulfill our commitment to them with the help of all the people that feel that this is an exact need that is out there. Housing is scarce. So with your time and your treasure and your talent, we would really appreciate you looking into our organization and to the women that we have made a commitment to. We have a mission and we have a vision, and we really want to fulfill it, and we can't do it alone. We have a fabulous team, and we have women and people that come in and help. And I'd like to introduce you to somebody that has done that. She has given up her time, her treasure, and her talent for us, for our women. And I'd like you to listen to Lori Waffen for a moment, so that I'm sorry that we're going over a little bit, but listen to her for a moment to hear why she volunteers, all of those things for Sanctum House. And we are really, really grateful. Thanks, Lori. Take it away.
Thank you, Edie. As Edie said, I'd first just like to say why I volunteer. I've always done some sort of volunteer activity. As a kid, it was because my family were all pretty much volunteers and they expected it of me. In my career years, the companies that I worked for expected it of me, or even kind of required it if you wanted to progress within the organization. But I didn't have to volunteer too long before I realized that I was really doing it for me, for what I got out of the experience. From the people that I was trying to help that were really inspiring me, or from the people that ran their organizations on a shoestring and a prayer, at the end of the day, it really made me a better person. But why this particular issue? Why human trafficking? You don't have to look very hard or very far to bump into a story about trafficking. But it was when I saw the word pandemic to describe it that, and this was really well before COVID was part of our lexicon, that I felt a sense of urgency to understand what was happening. And as I read and did a little research and sought out opportunities near me, Sanctum House was one of 3 or 4 that I decided to contact. So why Sanctum House? Well, as you've heard this morning, their comprehensive program is really unique. And they weren't just addressing one risk factor, but many. And they have a history of success that is very compelling if you're interested in changing your corner of the world, which I am. And they needed me and I needed them to make meaningful impact. So after spending some time with the women in the house this past year and hearing them talk about how important the program was to their recovery, I wanted to help with another aspect of support in addition to a gift of time. So my husband and I are gifting money and time to what we see is an incredibly worthy organization. And we're really just very excited to see what's going to happen in 2021. Thank you.
Lori, thank you very much. Not only obviously for your dollars, but for your time and your patience and your energy. And we need more people like that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate it. If you look on your screen, you see the information in terms of how to donate, where you can send a check, how you can go on the website. And it isn't always about dollars. It can be helping with your labor, helping with your talents and your skills, helping perhaps if you have materials and resources that, you know, is on that wish list for Edie. So please, please, please reach out. We're talking about a voice of hope, and that's what it's all about. It's a voice to educate others. It's a voice to help change laws, and it's a voice to make sure that we realize that we need to help these survivors, teach them they have a voice. What they say is important. What they've been through is important, and we need to give them the energy and the ability to take that next step and build a wonderful life, which they can most definitely do, especially with the help of Sanctum House. So I want to just thank everyone who decided to spend part of their morning here. Spread the word, hit social media, grab a screen grab if you can right now of that on your screen. Put it on your Insta, your Facebook, Twitter. I mean, even if one person sees it and they want to make a little donation, it's going to make a big difference. So please, please, please spread the word. And Edie, thank you so much for including all of us. I think it was a great morning. It really was.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you all. Thank you to TCF Bank. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to everyone that came and did, like you said, spent some time with us. I hope you took a tidbit away that you can learn. When we know better, we do better. You know, I hope your hearts are full for this population and that you will tell somebody what you learned today. That's how we make people aware. We make people aware by telling. Tell one, tell two, tell three, and eventually we can hopefully be voices of hope and end human trafficking. Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it. Love you all. My heart is very full.